Learning objectives. After completing this module, learners will be able to understand and describe the architectural styles adopted by the rulers, especially Mughals, during the period of 8th to 18th centuries. Describe how the Mughal rulers got inspired by cross-regional styles and ideas and adapted these for creating complex architecture. Understand and learn about Chahar Baghs and how Shah Jahan adopted various formats of these gardens. Introduction. From 8th to 18th century, two kinds of structures were built by kings and their officials. 1. Forts, palaces, garden, residences and tombs. 2. Temples, mosques, tanks, wells, caravansaries and bazaars. Merchants also indulged in the construction of temples, mosques and wells. Of these constructions, only huge mansions, Haveli, from the 18th century have survived. Addition of more rooms, doors and windows to the monuments was an architectural development that took place between 7th to 10th century. The trabeat or cobbled architectural style, which required the use of a beam across two vertical columns to add rooms, etc., was followed earlier. The trabeat style was used from 8th to 13th century to construct temples, mosques, tombs and buildings attached to large stepwells, baulis. The first floor of the Qutb Minar was built by Qutbuddin Aibak. The rest of the minar was completed by Iltutmish around 1229. A pattern is created by small arches and geometrical designs along with two bands of inscriptions in Arabic. It can be seen under the balcony. Placing inscriptions on the curved and angular surface of the minar must have been possible only by careful precision by extremely skilled craftsperson. Lightning and earthquakes, the onslaughts of nature, damaged it over a period of time. Repair work was carried out by Alauddin Khalji, Muhammad Tughlaq, Firuz Shah Tughlaq and Ibrahim Lodi from time to time. Temple construction in the early 11th century. Being places of worship, temples and mosques were constructed beautifully. They also stood for the power, opulence and devotion of the patron. According to an inscription in the Raja Raveshwara temple, the temple was constructed by King Raja Raja Deva to worship his god, Raja Raveshwaram. Kings of new dynasties coming to power asserted their moral right to be rulers. The fast-changing political scenario made it imperative for rulers to profess their close bonding with God through places of worship. The largest of all temples were constructed by the kings. These temples were miniature models reflecting the world ruled by the kings and their allies. By patronizing the learned and the pious, the kings sincerely endeavored to convert their capitals and cities into great cultural centers. Two major architectural developments during the 12th century were 1. Arcuate, an architectural form wherein the weight of superstructure or the structure above the doors and windows was borne by the arches. 2. The use of limestone cement increased considerably. Limestone cement was superior in quality. Its property of hardening into concrete when mixed with stone chips made construction of large structures easier and faster. Mosques and tanks. Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan's chronicler glorified the ruler as the architect of the workshop of the empire and religion. He also stated that a ruler brought the just rule of gods on earth. Persian court chroniclers considered the Sultan to be the shadow of God. According to an inscription in the Quwat al-Islam Mosque, God chose Alauddin as a king because he had the qualities of Moses and Solomon, the great lawgivers of the past. The greatest lawgiver and architect was God himself. He created the world out of chaos and introduced order and symmetry. Tanks. The Persian terms abad meaning populous, prosperous, and abadi meaning prospering or flourishing, both come from the word ab, which means water. Several kings made water available to their subjects by constructing tanks and reservoirs. It earned them huge praises. Sultan Iltutmish is an example. He was praised and respected universally for constructing a large Hauzi Sultani, or the king's reservoir, just outside Delhi Ikuhna. Rulers built tanks and reservoirs of various sizes to be used by their subjects. They were sometimes built in a temple, mosque, or gurudwara. Why were temples destroyed? Since large temples symbolized a king's devotion to God and his power and wealth, an invader would always attack temples first. The Padayan king Shrimar Sri Vallabha invaded Sri Lanka in the early 9th century, defeated King Sena I 831 to 851, and plundered all the valuables including the golden statue of the Buddha. Sena II, the next Sinhalese ruler, launched an attack on Madurai to avenge the defeat faced by Sena I. Victorious in his effort, he was able to restore the gold statue of Buddha. Similarly, Chola king Rajendra I built a Shiva temple in the early 11th century and placed many plundered statues including a sun pedestal and statues of Ganesha and Durga from the Chalukyas. Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni too looted the wealth and idols in the temples of defeated kings during his military campaigns in the subcontinent. By destroying temples, especially the Somnath temple, Mahmud Ghazni tried to build an image of a great hero of Islam. The political culture of the Middle Ages was such that victorious kings demonstrated their military success by destroying and looting the places of worship of the defeated ruler. Gardens, tombs and forts. 1. Mughal emperors Babur, Humayun, Akbar, Jahangir and especially Shah Jahan were passionate about literature, art and architecture. They took personal interest in matters related to these. Babur displayed more interest in planning and designing the layout of formal Chaharbagh or four gardens. These gardens were surrounded by rectangular walls and artificial channels divided them symmetrically into four quarters. Akbar, Jahangir and Shah Jahan laid out some of the most enchanting Chaharbaghs in Kashmir, Agra and Delhi. Akbar's reign saw many architectural innovations. His architects drew inspiration from the tombs of his Central Asian ancestor, Timur. The most noticeable feature of the hitherto complex Mughal architecture was the central towering dome and a tall gateway as entrance to a building. Humayun's tomb is one of the earliest monuments following these innovations. The tomb, built in red stone edged with white marble, usually occupied the central position of a huge formal Chaharbagh. The monument followed the tradition of Hasht-Bihisht, or 8 paradise having a central hall surrounded by 8 rooms. Gardens, tombs and forts. 2. Significant construction activities took place during Shah Jahan's reign in Agra and Delhi. The ceremonial halls of public and private audience, Diwani Khas or Aam, built in a large courtyard, resembled a mosque. These courts were called Chihil-Sutun or 40-pillared halls. Shah Jahan's throne was placed on a pedestal described as Qibla, the direction faced by Muslims in prayer. While in session, the courtiers faced the same direction. These architectural features conveyed that the king was God's representative on earth. He built a court in Red Fort, Delhi, to emphasize that the royalty shall impart justice always. Behind his throne were Pietratura inlays, which are a series of colored hardstones engraved into marble or sandstone to create beautiful ornate patterns. It depicted the Greek god Orpheus playing lute, whose music could calm beasts to a peaceful existence. Agra was Shah Jahan's capital in the early years of his reign. The nobility built their residences on the banks of river Yamuna in the midst of formal gardens built on the Chaharbagh format. Riverfront gardens, a variation in the Chaharbagh format, had houses on the edge closer to the river. Shah Jahan adopted this variation for Taj Mahal. The white marble mausoleum placed on a terrace by the edge of the river has the garden to its south. He developed this architectural form to control the nobles' access to river. He followed the same architectural style in his city of Shahjahanabad in Delhi. Region and Empire. Extensive construction activities between the 8th and 18th century led to a sharing of ideas, artistic forms, and traditions regarding construction and architectural styles across the regions. The style of royal elephant stables in Vijayanagara was influenced by the architecture seen in the adjoining sultanates of Bijapur and Golconda. Temples in Vrindavan near Mathura display enormous Mughal influence. The architectural style is similar to Mughal palaces in Fatehpur Sikri. Large empires integrated different regions under their rules, which contributed to this amalgamation. Mughal rulers skillfully adapted and adopted the regional architectural styles. The Bangla dome, a style resembling a thatched roof, caught the Mughals' fascination. They adapted in their buildings. Buildings in Akbar's capital Fatehpur Sikri reflect the influence of Gujarat and Malwa architectural styles. Despite the decline of Mughal authority in the 18th century, these cross styles continued to be adopted by rulers in their own kingdoms. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. For the period between 8th and 18th centuries, starting with Babur, the Mughal emperors were very interested in planning and adapting various styles of architecture. Kings and their officers built two kinds of structures. Firstly, forts, palaces, garden residences, and tombs, safe, protected, and grandiose places of rest. Secondly, structures meant for the subjects' use and comfort and public activity such as temples, mosques, tanks, wells, caravan, serais, and bazaars. Qutbuddin Aibak had the first balcony and floor of the Qutub Minar, figure 1, constructed in around 1199. Rest was constructed by Iltutmish around 1229. The Kandariya Mahadeva temple, dedicated to Shiva, was constructed in 999 by the king Dhanga Deva of the Chandela dynasty. The Rajarajeshwara temple, built in the 11th century at Thanjavur, had the tallest shikhara amongst temples of its time. Behind Shah Jahan's throne were a series of pietra dura inlays. Pietra dura are colored, hard stones placed in depressions carved into marble or sandstone, creating beautiful ornate patterns. In Agra city, Shah Jahan's capital, the nobles had constructed their homes on the banks of the river Yamuna, in the midst of formal riverfront gardens similar to the Chaharbagh format but with a variation. Shah Jahan also adapted the riverfront garden in the layout of the Taj Mahal. The ceremonial halls of public and private audience, Diwani Khas or Aam, resembling a mosque, were built with a large courtyard. Mughal rulers were particularly skilled in adapting regional architectural styles. The creation of large empires that brought different regions under their rule helped in this amalgamation. When the kings